Evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the 22-23 school board budget committee meeting. And I'd like to call this to order. First order of business, we need to approve the agenda for tonight.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
A second.
A motion is second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes from our budget meeting from last Monday night, the 9th. Everybody has it on their table there or their seat in front of them. And is there any, I guess, corrections or additions to the minutes that was laying in front of us?
I move we approve the minutes from our May 9th, 2022. budget meeting.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes from last Monday, the May 9th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, the next order of business we need to get a recommendation to move the budget forward. By rules, we'll take hopefully we get a recommendation in a second, then we go into questions. And then after the questions, and then we'll move on from there if we need to make any whatever from that. So I would like to hear a recommendation to move the proposed budget forward.
I move that we forward the proposed budget.
For a second,
My second.
there's a motion and a second for a recommendation to move the budget proposed forward. And so now we will open it up to questions and or addendums or changes. And I guess everybody saw some questions from Joe that he sent to Christie the other day, and Christie responded with their decisions. And I guess, Joe, the first, did these answer what you asked for? The questions, are these answering your questions, what you had in mind?
They did. I had a couple clarifications. So on the first one, the ELD program, TOSA, it doesn't look like there is direct student support with that, and I'm just wondering why.
Erica, do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. So we have specific goals to House Bill 3499, which I have reported on for the last few board meetings. And we have some really specific things that we need to do around systems change, K-12 for our ELD program. And so part of that is going to be researching some programs, doing some data digging, and a variety of other things related to the specific goals that we have around House Bill 3499 related measures, which were tied to some very specific goals. That position is tied to one of two goals that we have.
And so this specific grant is very specific to, like she's saying, just that House bill. So we can't use.
It cannot be used for FTE related to direct service work. It cannot supplement something that is required for state school funds to be used for.
So what's it mean when it says no direct student support?
Means that person is not like teaching a class, or that person is not pulling kids out
Okay.
and providing direct instruction. That is a requirement that we have to do with our state school funds, and we cannot use those funds for that purpose. We have to create our own sustainability within our own district or with our own funds. And so these House bill funds, we have this essentially, consider them like one-time funds, but we get them for multiple years to create systems, kind of like a big lift to do this deep dive in order to get us kind of up and running, so that after we've done that root cause analysis, we can keep those systems going with our state school funded personnel.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, sort of, yeah, and I'm going back to your PowerPoint about, like, this isn't about staffing, so I wanna respect that. And then is the MTSS, I'm assuming that's the multiple tier student support.
Mhm.
And that doesn't have any direct student support either.
That is correct. That position, we do not have a current MTSS system, so this is a person that will be leading the charge of that. We need an overhaul to our student services referral program for students. That's going to be overhauled by this person. And they will be also leading what is called a guiding coalition, or some people call it a leadership team. The whole, are you familiar with MTSS?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole, one whole side of the pyramid is working on tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 supports for students, both for academics and for behaviors. And this person will be overseeing the leadership teams in all 3 buildings as well. So it's a big lift.
So you have to go out and find someone to do this? You're looking to hire, or you have somebody yet?
We have someone.
Okay, good, all right. And this is just to help pay them.
Yes, and this is not a permanent position either. We don't want this person to stay in this position. We want to be able to establish something and maintain it and sustain it without a need to have this over time.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
And then my other clarification was in regards to question 6. And again, I want to honor the role of the committee. So if I'm overstepping, please, please
That's why you.
unstep me. That's such a word. I shared it in my email that some of these were my wonderings and some were wonderings from the community and neighbors and friends and family. And number 6 was probably the most, if I had to rate the most frequent question, it was that. On our street alone, we have 12 kids who are former Mount Angel School District students, including our own. And I will say those families did not take the decision to leave Mount Angel Schools lightly. I can speak for my own family that we, given the pandemic, we were given an opportunity of continuing distance learning or returning to a faith-based school that offered in-person for part of the day. And because of state rules, they could not exceed certain hours. So they were creative and shifted over to an emergency daycare certification. So they didn't break the rules. They just were very creative in implementing the rules. And one of the pieces I've heard a lot is that historically, I think the pandemic has exacerbated the decline in enrollment. But historically, if you look at the enrollment from St. Mary's to MAMS, there's always been a decrease. And then when you look at from MAMS to JFK, there's always been a decrease. And again, that's kind of a roller coaster over the last several years. And I know retention of students or recruitment of students is not a quick fix. It's really going to have a minimal impact on next year. But I do feel a responsibility to share with the board and also the budget committee that this has been an ongoing challenge that Mount Angel School District has faced. And again, it's been exaggerated and exacerbated by the pandemic. So I hope that as a system, even though our kids no longer attend Mount Angel School District, we're not moving anywhere. We're still taxpayers. We still go to games. We still participate in athletic events with the schools and with kids who go to the schools. So I hope that either the budget committee continues to push this issue, and then obviously the school board, y'all get to pick it up after we leave tonight, that it's a big issue, and I think given the right conditions, some families will return. I'm not saying all 100 of those families will. Looking at our little corner of Mount Angel, those 12 that I mentioned, probably only a couple would, just again, because of their experience. So I just want to share kind of that perspective to that question.
Well, and I think a little bit of it is, I think because of COVID and the pandemic, where the private schools were private, they probably weren't mandated. I think the school district was mandated. I don't know if you could open up if you wanted to. Like the private schools got to open up. I don't think the school district, if you said, you know what, we don't care what the state says, we're gonna open up anyway. Is that true?
With Sacred Heart, they're still required indoor masks, because I think with the public school system, that there was an increased level of mandates, but private schools still fell under that indoor category, regardless of if the indoor was a gym, like regardless of what it is. Certainly the public schools had a higher level, kind of a higher threshold to meet.
And I would add, I'm gonna go out on a limb and make this statement, that creative use of treating it as a daycare was not something Mount Angel School District ever considered doing, because that really wasn't in line with what was on paper as what we were supposed to be doing.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
we chose not to blur that route. And as a board member and community member, I completely understand people's decision to go elsewhere. And you're right, we've talked about this a lot as a board and as a community and through strategic planning, and what's it going to take to get people back to the schools? Well, what's it going to take to get people back to the schools, right? I mean, we're adding soccer, we're trying to do as much as we can with keeping elective choices at the high school. We know that's a big deal. So we know some of the big issues. And with this funding crunch, it's creating more challenges, and it's a conversation that's ongoing. And I love that it's been raised, because it is like the question that if you were to ask what keeps you up at night, I would say the majority of us, it's how do we get more kids back to Mount Angel School District? So yeah, definitely. And a really great question, really great question.
And hopefully we stay focused the way we are right now, back to school, with hopefully no masks. And I think, we've lost that age group, whatever, but I think in maybe 3 or 4 years or a couple of years, that it'll recirculate itself back out, that we'll probably pick up more kids again, probably, because we lost a percentage overnight. Now, once they get through their private schools, the new kids coming on, we need to attract them and keep them in our school and have the right classes and the right everything to want to come to school, and the good teachers and all that to make sure they come. So
Of the 100 students that we've lost, about how many are homeschooled?
59.
50, half of them are homeschooled. And not that we're snotty or overbearing or anything, but we know that all homeschoolers are, it's a good program. How do we know? Do we see them coming back in are happy or satisfied or disappointed with the quality of the homeschooling? Or you don't want to judge that or don't know?
No, I mean, it's not our place. They are required to register with the local educational services.
Okay, and are tested, they gotta go through tests. I don't even That's how freakish I am thinking about homeschooling.
There is kind of an organized thing of the homeschooling. Well, I happened to be walking home and ran into a young gal. I taught her, but you know, she has kids and her youngest was a kindergartner and she just decided to homeschool it. And so she wasn't even registered in the district. Her oldest was at that age, wasn't even registered in the district. So I says, and I asked her how it was going with homeschool. I said, do you have a network of some kind that you would? And she mentioned that there was someone lived in the area that knew that there's a lot of people doing the homeschool and I don't know if she's familiar with it, but they've got this organized kind of network then supporting and helping each other and that sort of thing, so.
It's pretty.
I just have, with your question about consolidating administratives, I am remembering, and Sherry, I'm thinking about how old you are and when you were in school.
I'm really young.
No, I don't.
You should be referring to me because I'm much older than you.
No, I just, my point is, and I know you're too young, no. But there was a time when we consolidated our high school principal and our superintendent was
Yes.
one and the same
Yes.
person. Do you kind of remember that in high school when
I do.
we had a thing, and I think it only lasted a year, maybe two at the most?
Al Gregory and Miller. They,
Yeah.
yeah. Back
Okay.
when we were in
Way
school.
back.
1975.
Okay, how dare I even think that? Okay, and I thought we were
John and I are
another year, but
The kid's been there.
it wasn't good. It must not have been a good efficient.
It's a difficult thing. It's working in another district where I had the opportunity to be consolidated also. And having to share administrators it makes it very challenging. And then with students, I think that at this time, it's important that we establish administrators and they work together to try to get those kids back. I'd hate to see, I think that if we only had one administrator for middle school and high school, it would even make it more challenging. How do you really want to keep on top of stuff. We want those kids coming back. And Joe, to your question about, I understand the key is transition. Once kids go to a private school, it's like they made friends. It's not about, certainly about Mount Angel. It's about, I don't want to leave my friends. But the key transition ages are from elementary to middle school to high school. You have to have that administrator there and those programs there to say, okay, now you've finished your parochial school. Now you can go to middle school. Now you could go to high school here and we can grab those kids back. I think that would be an opportunity for us to have those kids come back. I'd hate to see an administrator or running from building to building if there's a crisis. Basically what you're looking at. So while it could save money, it's not, you're basically looking at kids falling through the cracks, perhaps losing more kids, things that you don't want to have
Well,
happen.
and since I've offended all of you ladies,
Not all.
Not me.
I just think that we are not desperate enough to be creative enough to solve a problem that we don't have yet. But if we keep losing students, we're gonna be juggling a lot more financial balls, which I don't want us to see, but we might have to become very creative in our thinking when we've got a school district 4 miles away, just, I hear statements and questions from people, well, why can't we, and why can't we? And, a lot of big questions and no solutions to those. But right now, we don't recognize this yet, but we are in the luxury of operating the way we are for now. And I hope there's not another bad thing coming down that might dictate to us that we have to become more creative in addressing some problems. So let's just enjoy it all now, while we're.
In all my years teaching, this is by far the largest number of students that we've lost. Because I can remember, I was in the district 25 years, so a little ups and downs a little bit, nothing significant. The biggest loss tended to be from middle school to high school. And I really remember even from St. Mary's to the middle school more often gaining kids, whether they came out of district or something like that. But the biggest loss was always, especially once Silverton got their new high school. And then, there's more opportunities, and we got this brand new high school we can go to, and that sort of thing. But 100 students is like, whoa, we might lose 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Which you didn't want to lose, but 100, it just blows my mind.
But then the next year you have a 15 person baby boom. that-
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
incoming kindergarten class.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, things are different today. I think Nan, that was when we were in school, because the biggest problem the principals and the superintendents had back then was trying to stop car racing during the lunch hour. So I think they got so much.
You were the ring, John was the voice of experience.
But anyway, it's like I said, I think it was different back then, because I remember that.
No, Father Timothy used to land planes.
Yeah. No, okay.
You remember that? Do any of you don't go back that far? Father Timothy had an airplane club, and he would land it in the place where he parked it is still over there behind Bowen's house. And he would take off and land. His students.
You're talking a real plane, not like
A real plane.
A real plane.
Yes.
So yeah, it's different.
This is what Ken and I
So yeah,
were-
let's
Wow.
Right,
let's hear a little bit.
But no, these are great comments and everything, and yes, and go ahead, Andy.
Speaking along Joe's lines about the community coming to you and asking questions. Couple questions that the community members have asked me, and being creative, is we're got a lot of people in district office compared to 20 years ago when I went through, right? There was 2 people in there and superintendent, and now why do we need so many people in the district office compared to before? And so I think that those are valid questions that are there. And I think that as a district, when there's no, they see all these cuts happening and they're not seeing like that child's not directly really helping my child from their view. I think that communication piece is needed. When we're cutting people, we need to keep as many people that have direct contact with my kid is what I'm hearing from there. So I think that communication would be good out to the community as well. Something, looking at our district priorities, sports programs. Now, being who I am, I never want to cut any sports, or huge fan of keeping all sports programs, especially adding. Couple of things I had thoughts, or what are our current athletic fees? When was the last time they were raised? And would a potential increase be reasonable to ask? I know it's not going to help out tremendously, but it'd be a little bit, or perhaps could we take on some of that expense that those programs have and kind of maybe push it towards team fundraising and kind of saying, hey, this percentage is something, whatever the percentage is, your team is responsible for. So 10% of football budget is obviously more than 10% of the cross-country budget based on number of students out, right? So those are just some wonderings I have.
How much they paying right now, each student to play sport?
$100 at the high school level and $75 at the middle school.
What does other schools pay like?
Yeah, I can tell you that, actually. So we're pretty in middle of the road. Silver Falls is $100 a sport for high school, and middle school is $50. And then North Marion is $125. Middle school is $50, and Jervis doesn't charge anything. This was a question that.
Is that per sport? or
Per sport, but there's a
like
cap.
Family cap?
Yeah, so there's a 2-sport individual cap, and then there's a family cap.
For us?
But yeah, gosh, I cannot remember off the top of my head what that is, but it's a 2-sport individual cap. So each kid, like if they play 3 sports, the 3rd sport is something they don't pay for. This was a question that came up during our listening sessions with the school. And honestly, before we raised fees, because I feel like we're pretty comparable to others, I'd like to do like what she's talking about, where, you know, require some fundraising. Another part that's really expensive for sports that you don't even see in the sports budget that we've like outlined is like the extra duties that we're paying employees to do, like line judging and time clocks and things that parents could be doing. But there's no expectation right now of parents to do that.
But
I
all the
would-
time for line judging.
I would interject though, right now with COVID and the COVID rules for volunteers, your volunteer base is 0.
Well, that's a good,
Especially for the indoor sports.
yeah. And that's, I mean, that's a good point, but if that's a way to offset, I mean, you know, there are places like where they expect you to volunteer so much, and if you choose not to volunteer for whatever the reason might be, you pay a little bit extra.
And this gets back to some equity issues that I think we need to be very careful about enforcing. But yeah, great discussion, and kind of piggybacking on Mark, it gets harder and harder to find people to volunteer for anything. And that's just, that's my sense and my experience, having had kids go through the system. So relying on volunteers to make really important programs happen can be a challenging goal.
Yeah.
I saw the desperation in Mr. Moffitt's emails this winter.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're bad, they're
Basketball,
hard,
volleyball,
and,
And because for parents, we are still, you know, anyone in a building is required to have their COVID or their letter. That really limits the amount of parents who can participate to that point.
Yeah, they have a COVID shot or something.
You either had to have your shot or you had to have your letter in that says you're exception.
Well, and I think we need to look at everything, but on the other part is just be careful, because, you know, if we're competitively charging people to play sports, you know, the worst thing I'd want to do is lose a few more kids if we're charging too much to play sports. They go someplace else.
And then my next question is, how many times do we waive that for students that can't afford it? Because I think that happens.
yeah, we don't have like a formal process, like a lot of the other school districts, if you're free reduced lunch, then you're reduced by this much or you're free. It's only if the child comes to the office and says that, or if they know, then they will send them home with the information, because, you know, and then, so I can't remember off the top of my head, I can check with Brianne again, but it's a very small percentage of kids that are getting their fees waived. And honestly, right, what they've been doing up until this point is using donations to cover those costs. So it's not like we're losing general fund money. They're still paying those fees. It's just getting paid by the schools. But the fundraising piece too, we see a few fundraisers that come through. But I mean, there's definitely opportunity.
And most of the high school teams get the Oktoberfest, whatever it is, you know, when they go, they clean up or that sort of thing. So they do have that for quite a few of the high school teams. I don't know that middle school does any of it anymore, but I know that I don't know what they get paid, but they're up bright and early, so they should be paid good.
Yeah, what, you know, what they get paid for us, like a team for doing streets? Yeah.
The football team, the volleyball team, I know, cleaning up in the morning.
Probably $1,500 or so.
Per team?
Yeah, if it's the sports, like the girls volleyball team, whatever. Or maybe we might allow 1,500 and they might have 4 different groups do it.
I think it's like $500 per
Yeah,
sport.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, they do it, they break it up all 4 days, and, you know, and I'll tell you, it's just staff people, but I'll tell you, if somebody here was in charge of volunteers, you know, look how many times the chamber calls, and look how many times people are calling and looking for volunteers, but if there was one person say, hey, I need such and such, so many people for a group on this day, we'll pay this much, and I think you would find there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, you know, personally, we have a big fundraiser coming up in June, and we're paying the wrestling team $1,500 to come and set up and clean up and do everything for 6 hours on a Sunday. So,
Well, that Oktoberfest board meeting too, when they had that big meeting, It's usually some organization from the school that brings their kids in and they get
Oh, yeah,
paid for
we,
serving
there's,
that.
yeah, there's lots of opportunities, I think, for that, just, going outside the box a little bit, I think you can do that, but, and we're on the right page. I mean, we're saying, we're asking the right questions, and, I think we're still going the right way, so, I mean, just, we don't want to give up. I do have one on the reductions elimination page in the back, it says, eliminate 2 classified counselor support positions. What is that?
So last year or this current school year, because we didn't have actual counselors, we had to think outside the box. And so we had some other positions that carried through those supports to the students. And those support positions were in addition to, so instead of it being us having 3 counselors, we had 2 support individuals plus, or behavioral specialists is what we call them. They were certified teachers that work with students on this. And then those support positions helped with like the paperwork and that side of it.
But I understand that we are hiring counselors back at
Correct.
all 3 schools.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
2 for sure right now, and we're still working on the 3rd.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that would help with students' retention, staying in schools, once we have the counselors up and going.
Oh, yes, definitely.
That's kind of a key thing that I think we'll see kids coming back when they have somebody to talk to and somebody to reach out to, so that will help.
So is anybody thinking ever again about having a school resource officer back into the school district? Is that even something that anybody's entertaining to approach, or?
I mean, not at this point, not budget wise, but I will say, from being on the city budget,
Mhm,
this topic came up on the other side, from the
It
city
did?
side. Mhm. And one thing I can say is that without having them in the building all the time,
Mhm.
we're still getting great support from the Major Police Department.
Okay, good.
They're doing a great job of being here for our kids when we need them. We've had some things happen this year.
Messy stuff.
Mhm.
Well, I know there was a time when the city was having a little, things were tight financially, and I think there was one year when I was on the school budget that the school ponied up more than their 50%.
Mhm.
And so don't want to speak for the city that might ever happen. But, there, in the past, there's been some flexibility on that 50-50 thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a valued service,
Yeah, it got like brought up at the last city budget meeting, and I don't remember exactly what Chief said. I was at a softball game, so.
So,
balancing.
I can just, so the number has been 50-50 for a long time.
yeah.
There might have been some flexibility in some 10 years ago or
Yeah,
so.
oh,
where
yeah.
People wanted to eliminate it entirely, which is the reason I ended up on the council. But the police chief and the city, as a policy, we are not going to say, well, if we don't get our 50%, you can just spend for yourself.
Sure.
It's, we're going to give as much service as we can.
Mhm,
We haven't eliminated a position.
mhm.
So
Right.
at least, although it's not exactly the same, I think the service level will be very similar to what we've had. And when when you talk about cuts, you don't want to make cuts that destroy what you have that might help you retain students. So you want to maintain a quality of service,
Mhm.
both from the city and the school district. So I think that we're a team like that, so.
Okay. Is there any more discussion or questions on the budget at all? Because this is our chance to, do something, if we need to do anything, so.
Where's the public? Somebody sign up. Anybody sign up? No.
Doesn't look like it. Well, So hearing no more discussions or questions, I will call for the vote to recommend to move the proposed budget forward for the year 22/23. All in,
I think we need to read, it's specific. I can.
oh, you want to do the recommendation?
I can make a motion, John.
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion.
Yeah, I think we do the
Or let
motion.
Keith make the motion.
I think we do the motion. This, we say this down here then, okay.
Okay, I'm move to approve the 22-23 budget in the aggregate amount of $14,279,304. And that the permanent tax rate of 4.6268 per 1,000 of assessed value be assessed in support of the general fund and the amount of $928,829 for bonds.
A second.
And my discussion is, I just want to thank Christy and Rachel and everyone else involved in developing the budget this year. I think you mentioned, Joe, that it's been the most transparent in your experience, and it has been. You've used clear language that I understand. I really appreciate that. And I know that you've come through every opportunity for making cuts with the least impact on the students. And it's been a heavy lift this year, and I just really want to thank you for the work. And first time we've got Gail sitting on the other side,
Yeah.
and I say amazing.
Good job, Christie. Okay.
Well trained. Well trained. Not bad.
All because of that.
I think so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay. Hearing nothing, the budget has been approved. Good job, everybody. Now, I'd like to just make one final comment in closing, okay? And I enjoyed being the chairman this year. I enjoyed that the school board has done everything. And I just hope that, our counselors that we're gonna hire, in the last month, I've gone to 2 job fairs, one at the CTE school and one at the school district where we had 700 kids come in. Every one of those schools had their counselors with them, with these kids, and walking them through there. And, the CTE school was incredible because they had, when I asked them if they had an idea what they're gonna do for their career, 99% they had an idea. And the kids that came, the other 700, they were still looking and everything. But it was neat to see how the counselor were pushing them and all that. So I just hope that is the goal, or, just to see these counselors, because I think, yes, we lost 100 kids and you're not going to get them all back overnight, but one by one, if we don't lose any, if we lose a lot less next year and the year after, we can keep moving forward and forward. And if we have these, if the kids are start asking for, a different class, whatever, we want to have that opportunity to add that maybe. I mean, right now at the high school, we got a welding class that's sitting there. Hasn't done nothing for 3 years and it's state of the art. And so, and gym equipment has offered, hey, bring the kids out there. We'll give them a tour of our factory and, give them an idea, and then they can go back and maybe weld. I don't know, but we've got some opportunities there, and then I hope we can continue to move forward and see that happen, because I think that's where next generation of kids are gonna come to. So anyway, does anybody have anything else?
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.
John, can you do one more?